Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Pretty much everyone and their dog is familiar with old Peter Parker at this point, and can you blame him? This guy has 60 decades of comics, a whole heap of movies and video games. Yep, he's been kicking for a while. So if you've been given the job to not only adapt Spider-Man, but come up with something new and fresh, well, that's easier said than done. And I'm sure that's the question the writing team over at Sony asked themselves when beginning work on Into the Spider-Verse. Comic book fans aside, even the casual moviegoer could probably give you a rundown on the basic Spidey lore. After all, they've had 2 separate trilogies to get acquainted, and 2 other movies. We love you, Andrew. So what do you do when you have a character that's been done to death in the mainstream media? Well, you take him and you flip him on his head, of course. But no, not like what they were trying to do with Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy. Instead, this Peter manages to be completely different from his usual counterpart, while also keeping the core values of the character intact. Amazing, right? Alright, so if you haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse and you don't want spoilers, first, what are you doing with your life? And second, pause this video and go watch it right now. Oh wait, alright, so now that those losers are gone, let's get to the meat and potatoes. So as we all know, Into the Spider-Verse is a story about Miles Morales, who gets bitten by a radioactive spider and watches his super handsome version of Peter Parker bite the dust, while trying to stop Kingpin from launching a multiverse collider. And I'll just mention this briefly, but having this universe's version of Peter Parker be straight up perfect, in comparison to the Spidey we get later on, is just brilliant, and really highlights how far our future hero has fallen. This leaves Miles with spider powers, and a giant Brooklyn-sized problem he has to fix. But just how is Miles going to stop Kingpin when he has zero idea that you need to press R2 to swing? Well, enter the man, the myth, the legend, Peter B. Parker. So to put a long story short, Miles, with the help of Peter Brokey Parker, managed to put a stop to Kingpin, along with some help from a few other Spider-folk. And the day is saved. Miles is now officially Spider-Man, unless you ask someone on Twitter, and Peter Parker no longer wants to commit Dead by Daylight. Yeah, let's hope that one can fly under the YouTube radar. Hooray! Alright, so that was a super brief rundown, and obviously I missed a bunch of details, but I just want to talk about this man, damn it. So to get to the title of the video, or more specifically what I mean by how Into the Spider-Verse fixed Peter Parker, I first need to address one of the biggest criticisms I and many others have with the current treatment of 616 Peter, and that's that the guy just can't catch a break. So I know what some of you may be thinking. Why can I praise Into the Spider-Verse's rendition of Peter Parker, which sees fit to strip pretty much everything away from the guy before the story's barely begun, while also disliking the 616 version of the character, who ultimately has had pretty much everything ripped away from him as well? And yes, I'm ignoring the fact that Peter B. Parker does get a happy ending as opposed to the other guy. Well, it's because one of these stories is built on the fundamental structure of Spider-Man's character, and that is that ultimately, he's a relatable guy.
You know one of the greatest things about Spider-Man's outfit, his costume? What? He is completely covered. So any kid could imagine he's Spider-Man because no color of the skin shows. He could be black under that, he could be red, he could be yellow, he could belong to any race. And that wasn't done purposely, it was done accidentally, but I think it was the best thing we did, making him so that he could be anybody under that costume.
You see, do you know what's hashtag relatable to a lot of people in the world? Is it divorce? No. How about starting and failing your own business or project? Nah, definitely not. What about getting burnt out by a hobby or passion because you've just been doing it for so darn long? Nope. I know what's actually relatable. Selling your marriage to the devil. I mean, who hasn't done that every now and then, right? And that right there is, in my opinion, the core difference between these 2 Peter Parkers. And frankly, why one works and one doesn't. It's completely fine having heroes fail time and time again. Plenty of stories follow this formula perfectly, and even 616 Spider-Man once did for a time. I mean, sure, if Spider-Man or Peter got a W, you just knew the other half was about to receive an L. But the problem is how these stories of loss are told. The whole Mephisto situation was just a lazy way to push Peter and MJ's marriage into the corner. I would honestly have had no issue with the current 616 Peter and MJ not being together if it was actually told in a thoughtful and believable way, and added some form of value to the overall narrative. You know, like fear of having kids, or Peter's life as Spider-Man becoming too hectic. Heck, pretty much anything over what we got. And that's where Peter B. Parker straight up takes the cake and eats it too. I mean, the guy at the start of the movie is a loser, even more so than the current 616 Peter if we're being honest. But seeing his little flashback sequences, where you watch his passion and vigor for being Spider-Man slowly die, and then seeing his fear of children destroy his marriage with MJ, is not just brutal, but as I mentioned before, I'm sure at least one of us has had a moment of been there before when watching that part of the movie. And so even though by the time we're introduced to Peter B, he's failed multiple times, that doesn't stop him from being a fantastic character. And if anything, all of those failures those just make him all the more interesting. To a lot of people, myself included, seeing a role model or hero you love fail to achieve something, no matter how big or small, goes a long way with being able to connect to that person or character. And it even helps those of us who are currently struggling to know that it's not just a problem unique to them, and that even Spider-Man can't avoid divorce court. Now, of course, this Peter isn't all rain clouds. He still has that witty tongue and certainly hasn't lost his skill for wisecracking. As I said, this story manages to flip the character on his head while also keeping true to the core values. And the way Peter carries himself in the movie perfectly reflects how depression affects everybody. People don't just walk around as sad sacks 24/7. You can still be making jokes while maybe not feeling so great yourself. And like, who didn't put their hand over their mouth when Peter was like,
"With great power comes
Don't
great..."
you dare finish that sentence. Don't do it. I'm sick of it.
And I could talk for days about Peter and Miles' relationship in the movie, but I'll keep it short. Using Miles as a way for Peter to grow and get over his fear so that he can come back to Mary Jane as a more complete person was just beautiful to see. And I adore that whole forest chase sequence where Peter finally teaches Miles how to swing. And I hate to bring it back to the comics again, but I really wish they'd take more inspiration from these movies when it comes to handling these two characters in the pages. But, you know, that would have to rely on Peter growing and, well, yeah. And so with all that in mind, by the time we get to Across the Spider-Verse, where Peter is just a straight up goofy spider dad, well, it's not only well deserved, but just amazing to see. But we'll get to that movie another time. And that's how I think Into the Spider-Verse fixed Peter Parker. It took the Spidey we know and love, straight up punched him in the gut in a believable and compelling way, and gave us a Peter Parker who we can relate to and admire in the end. And if that's not a solid Spider-Man, I don't know what is. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more content like this, drop a like and subscribe. And remember, true believers, I've got nothing.